we're here today for the first ever IAWPC podcast, and my name is Hayley O'Keeffe. I'm a journalist, and I work on the IAWPC campaign, just helping out. And this is Debbie Wilson. She is the co-campaigner and sort of everybody's boss alongside Les. Lovely to have you with us today, Debbie. Please, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and about coming to the campaign?
Yeah, hi Hayley, and thank you for the introduction. Just FYI for everybody, Hayley's kind of more than the kind of journalist for the campaign. There's done a huge amount of work in getting the core message of the campaign out around the world, really. So thank you so much for that, Hayley. I'm Debbie. I'm one of the co-campaigners along with Les Ward. Les is the founder of the International Animal Welfare and Protection Coalition, and I'm hopeful that he will also be interviewed by Hayley at some point, and he can tell everybody about the coalition. But just going back to your question, Hayley, about who I am, and which I think is an important question. I mean, it's certainly something that I ask myself when I'm interested in a campaign. I want to know about the campaign and also the people behind the campaign. But just in terms of the International Animal Welfare and Protection Coalition's campaign regarding what's happening to the dogs in Morocco, I think it's important just to kind of encapsulate what actually the campaign is about, which is the stopping of the government sanctioned and mandated killing of the dogs in Morocco. There are two things I think it's important to note about that, Hayley, and anybody listening, is that there has been a campaign against the dogs in Morocco for a long time, for decades now, and what we've been aware of, we as in sort of collectively, is that the killing of the animals is kind of like a normal practice. We're not normalizing it. I mean, in terms of Morocco, it's normal, and it has been for some time. However, excuse me, there is a pattern as well that whenever there's a big national or an international event that's been staged in Morocco, the killing of the dogs intensifies, particularly around the areas that the event will take place. Running alongside that, given now that FIFA voted through Morocco as a co-host for the 2030 World Cup along with Spain and Portugal, there appears to be an ongoing, what people are calling cleansing exercise by the authorities in the areas that the 2030 World Cup will take place. So we're talking about Tangier, Rabat, Fez, Casablanca, Marrakech, and Agadir. These are the 6 stadium sites. So we're talking about a country. There are also other countries that have these cleansing, inhumane dog population management practices. And our understanding is that Morocco is what's called an outlier, in that there are these practices around the world, but in terms of where Morocco sits within that, it's an outlier. What that means is these practices are more violent than they are in other countries. So the coalition decided to come together, particularly to focus on what's happening in Morocco, and it was in relation to the requests from people inside Morocco, the constancy of them contacting the coalition to say, can you please help with. And again, Les can speak some more of that. Sorry, Hayley, you were just going to...
No, that's all right. The coalition, if we just sort of talk a bit about what the IAWPC actually is, the coalition of all these wonderful global charities that come together when there's a matter of global importance. So it's really key, that these huge charities are all recognising this issue in Morocco, isn't it? It's absolutely horrendous. So Debbie, you're an academic, and you've studied psychology. Can you tell us a bit more about that in relation to the campaign?
Absolutely, yeah. So I use the term academic very loosely.
Sorry,
And
right.
it's okay. I came into academia, and I'm now a PhD student studying with the University of Huddersfield as a consequence of my understanding and my exposure personally to what was happening on the ground in Morocco. So way before I knew anything about the International Animal Coalition, the IAWPC, I was in Morocco on holiday. It was a couple of years ago, and I've had an ongoing love affair with Morocco for 30 years, and with the dogs of Morocco particularly for the past 12, 13, no more actually, I was arrested here since 2006. Actually, it's a long time, isn't it? 2006 to now is something like 19 years, so a long time of this ongoing love affair with the dogs of Morocco. I was always that kind of crazy English woman on holiday with a big sort of bag across full of dog biscuits, and then whenever a dog would sort of cross my path, I'd put down food and sort of try get a stroke of the dog. And then I was here in 2013, so some years on from 2006, and this very kind of this dog in this very, very poor condition crossed my path. It wouldn't come and get treats or biscuits, just wouldn't. He was too wary. But eventually, he did came out of the shadows, and what myself and my partner noticed is that we hadn't seen him close up before. He was bleeding from his eyes and his nose and his ears, and he was in a really terrible condition. And it turned out that he had a condition called leishmaniasis, where he'd been bitten by sandfly, and he was the sandflies are vectors for leishmaniasis. So he was incredibly unwell, and with the help of people on the ground in Morocco, we managed to sort of contain him enough to then give us time to get a truck from Spanner. So Spanner is the Society for Protection of Animals Abroad, and their guys came with a truck with one of those kind of hailbacks, kind of dropped down, and sort of very kind of swiftly, humanely, very kindly got him into the back of the truck. And then, long story short, a year later he came to live with us in the UK, and we did best years of our life living with Eric, the Moroccan street dog. So we've lived with the Moroccan street dog, and they're just amazing. So I'm going to skip forward now to Eric died in 2019, but he died surrounded by love on the sofa in our house in Yorkshire. And we've then moved into the pandemic. The pandemic then in Morocco, there was a very, very kind of quick shutdown in Morocco, and it remained shut down for a long time. So as soon as then the borders reopened, my partner and I were kind of more or less on the first flight out to Morocco. I was desperate to see how the animals were and how they'd kind of coped on the street. So I'm going to kind of move forward now to 2023, and I love dancing, and I'd been out dancing at this club in Morocco, and I got talking to a young girl, actually a couple of young women who'd just been volunteering at Morocco Animal Aid, which is a charity on the coast in Morocco. And one of them was sort of very keen to tell me of what was the execution of the animals in Morocco. Now, I'm not naive, and I know it wasn't a bed of roses for the animals on the streets, or the dogs, on the streets of Morocco. The the kind of stray dogs or free roaming dogs, whatever we want to call them, but I didn't appreciate and understand. I didn't know that the authorities were slaughtering the dogs in the way that they were. So it was one of these two young women in particular, a young Moroccan woman, who first, I suppose, introduced me really to the horrors of what was happening, and I'm thankful and grateful to her for doing that. And she's somebody that I'm still in contact with now. And then as the days unfolded, she, which was okay, she passed my WhatsApp details to a Moroccan activist, an older woman, not old, just older than her. She was a young woman, an older woman. And she sent me what's probably the worst image that I've ever seen of an act of cruelty and violence on any animal. I won't even talk about it now. And I couldn't, it was just impossible to process what I was seeing. And I was kind of thrown into this state of shock and not so much disbelief initially, because it was so bad. I couldn't quite believe what I was seeing, but it didn't take me long to kind of appreciate that what I was seeing was a real thing that I was seeing, a kind of a real, kind of act of violence towards an animal. But I probably didn't sleep or eat for quite a while. I was in Morocco for a month. I probably didn't sleep or eat for about a couple of weeks, really, and I felt really traumatized by what I'd seen. But actually, it was really interesting when I first kind of received the image. And I said that's kind of initial kind of shock and disbelief, but it didn't take long for me to kind of compute that this was a real thing. Yeah. And I was sat in a cafe just on a main road actually that runs through Marrakesh, and I had this instinct to just run out into the middle of the traffic and lie down in the road, just stop the traffic. Like in a way that if I could stop the traffic, I could almost like stop what was happening. And but I didn't run out in the middle of the road, thankfully. And but what I did decide to do was, one, I did some research into what was happening behind this image, and what I suppose kind of discovered, really, it wasn't my discovery, what I discovered for myself. Through research was the connection of this what happened to this animal with Morocco wanting to put a bid in for the FIFA 2030 World Cup. And what started to emerge was this kind of, I want to say story, I don't want to diminish it by calling it a story, but I can't think of another word right now, of this kind of cleansing of the animals in order to what appeared to be to impress FIFA, like no animals here, there are no stray dogs here. And my experience going back, up to 2006, up until this point, we're in 2023 now, was of these beautiful, animals, one that I'd brought back from Morocco and lived with. So it just all kind of made no sense. So I did two things. When I got back to the UK a couple of weeks later, I'd already formulated in my mind that I was going to protest, not by throwing myself in the middle of the road in Marrakesh, but by having a protest outside the Moroccan embassy in London. So I did what I call my protest in a bag. I got all my kind of stuff together in a bag, and my friend Jenny, and we got on the train and we went down to King Cross and then went over to the Moroccan embassy, and we put up all these kind of placards, just showing, what was happening inside Morocco. The staff of the embassy seemed in a bit of a flurry. They kept coming out and sort of taking photographs. The Moroccan Secret Service turned up as well, and then but people then in Morocco were calling over WhatsApp and crying and saying, "Oh my God, we can't believe this. This is the first time anybody has taken this outside of Morocco to show the world what's happening." What became very apparent to me, so I'm just going to go back to being in Morocco, and it kind of informed the nature of the protest. I am a psychotherapist, and it was very clear to me that this what was public violence towards the animals that children and citizens were bearing witness to, was also child abuse. It's not normal. It's not normal for children to be exposed to this type of violence. And given that it's not normal, I think it must be having an impact on children. I felt bloody traumatized by somebody sending me a photograph. I'm a grown woman. What must be like for children seeing this, and particularly young children seeing this for the first time. So when I then did the protest in London, it was about both things. It was about the violence towards the animals, but also the violence towards the children as well. Violence towards animals is also violence towards children. So the other thing that I did very, very quickly was I raised what's called a safeguarding concern with FIFA. So I submitted a safeguarding report through FIFA's online reporting system, and I was very clear to say, this is not FIFA saying that they want the animals executed. I'm not saying that. It appears as if this is what the authorities have decided to do to impress FIFA. So there are two things: there's the violence towards the animals, and there's children being exposed to this. So for me, this was a safeguarding. This continues to be a safeguarding concern.